This is a press conference about the KiwiRail new ferries and infrastructure. There will be questions after it, and it's a press conference on this issue and this issue alone. That's how important the matter is. First, can we acknowledge Chris Mackenzie, the Chair of Ferry Holdings, who's here today, alongside Catherine Rich and Captain Ian McLeod. Unfortunately, Heather Simpson and Greg Lowe couldn't make it here today. This team has worked hard, but they have not worked alone. Sensible people from across Port Marlborough, Centre Port and KiwiRail have come to the fore, and we thank them all. On 11th December last year, we resumed responsibility for the rail portfolio, and with it the leadership of the Cook Strait ferry replacement program. We said then that we would outline the key ship and infrastructure decisions by the end of March, and today is that date. The IREX program, which our government cancelled in December 2023, should be studied by members of the public who want to see their dollars respected. It is a cautionary tale. In 2020, when we were responsible for KiwiRail, we committed $400.1 million $400.1 million as a taxpayer contribution to buying 2 new ferries and readying the infrastructure for them. Back then, the total cost of that program was supposed to be $1.4 billion, with most costs financed by KiwiRail and the ports. Today, we're announcing that we are saving the taxpayers billions. That arrangement back then placed a commercial incentive on the companies to keep the costs low. What happened between 2021, when the ship contract was signed, and 2023, when the truth came out about this project, is as follows. The project leaders approached this task as though they were pricing the job, not delivering it. They did so because the previous government gave them every reason to believe they would get their way. The only method to stop behaviour like that is to do exactly as the Minister of Finance did in December 2023. Today, we have vindicated the decision of the Minister of Finance to stop the old project. Project IREX was said to cost $3.1 billion according to KiwiRail, while officials warned the previous government that it would approach $4 billion, and even above that. Taking a charitable view of the world, by accepting KiwiRail's estimate, that meant the infrastructure costs alone would be no less than $2.6 billion. The vast bulk of this cost was expected from you, the New Zealand taxpayer. We said no. We said we could do better, so here is what we will do. By Christmas 2029, 2 new inter-island ferries will enter service on the Strait. They will get you, your family, the caravan, the dog, and all the rest across the Strait, which is what New Zealanders want to happen. New ferries mean we are buying for a full service life of 30 years. We are looking to the long term. These ferries will be about 200 metres in length and about 28 metres in width. That is longer and wider than the current inter-island ferry fleet of 3, meaning it has capacity to serve current and future demand. Both ferries will have capacity for 1,500 passengers. Crucially, these ferries will be smaller than what the previous government contracted in 2021. That saves us materially on infrastructure. The Cook Strait is also an essential connection for the movement of our goods and services. It has a freight task to serve, and these ferries will do exactly that. Trucks will drive onto these ferries. Rail will shunt onto these ferries. Both ferries will have 2.4 kilometres of lanes for trucks and cars, with space for 40 rail wagons. Again, both ferries will have 2.4 kilometres of lanes for trucks and cars, with space for 40 rail wagons. We serve both because they serve every business stretching across our provinces and our cities in New Zealand. The reason for this is just plain common sense. Road-only ferries would require us to reconfigure the whole operation at considerable costs. Road and rail ferries mean we shunt large freight volumes in single movements. That saves time, and time saves money. The Ministerial Advisory Group proposed the government buy 2 road-only ferries said it would be cheaper overall and that we should approach just one shipyard to do the job. That is, the old group, Ministerial Advisory Group, said buy 2 road-only ferries, it'll be cheaper overall and that we should approach just one shipyard to do a deal. We did not accept that advice. We believe in competitive tenders and a full appreciation of what best serves our country. The road-only ferries came out as more expensive than buying road and rail ferries. The surest way to keep infrastructure costs low is to use what you've already got. The marine infrastructure in Picton requires replacement, so it will be replaced. The marine infrastructure in Wellington has life left in it, so we will modify and keep using it. This level of pragmatism was completely absent under IREX. The road and rail marshalling yards will be modestly modified, but not completely renewed like under IREX. These yards were built by our forebears. They knew what they were doing back then. We know it because these yards have served us well for decades after decade. The road connections in Wellington and Picton will also be improved in discussion with these councils. The terminal buildings in Wellington and Picton will remain as they are today. While some may regret the absence of a Taj Mahal in Picton and a Sydney Opera House in Wellington, the people paying their taxes will not. And need we remind you that the main experience people have when they wait to board the ship is not the terminal building, it's their own vehicle. For those walking on, it's the ship that gives the experience, not the walkway. The time will come when new terminal buildings will be needed and space is allocated for when the ports are ready, but they are not needed now and not most certainly at your expense now. The new wharf in Picton is looking to the future. It will have a dual-level link span and double lanes. That means unloading and offloading will be faster in Picton than it is today. While Wellington remains single lane, as this saves the taxpayer considerable money, the time will come when the port companies invest in double lane infrastructure. The door to the port's long-term aspirations remains open, but we are focused on what's needed right here and right now. The next steps, well, today our government has agreed to buy 2 new ferries to serve our people, cars, trucks and rail. Our government has agreed to a pragmatic infrastructure solution that focused on minimum viable, maximum reuse. We have said yes to affordability and no to extravagance. This gives the small ferry holdings team the mandate they need to negotiate a good ship contract with commercial shipyards. Ferry Holdings now has key ship decisions, which enables them to finalise the ship specifications and invite a short list of shipyards into the closed tender process. These shipyards won't know each other and they will compete on price and quality. Ferry Holdings also has key infrastructure decisions and a firm budget to live within. This enables them to progress the engineering and construction program with both ports and KiwiRail. They will keep a firm hand on the tiller to keep scope and costs under control. And the ports will share this view as their dollars are also on the line. We receive alternative proposals from all manner of people and companies with many insightful ideas. They formed part of our decision. We have decided in the national interest to directly purchase ships and proceed with an infrastructure plan that meets our needs. We are buying ships and sorting infrastructure, and what must follow is a commercially disciplined business to safely, reliably and affordably serve our people and their goods. And for those in the media who want to know how much will it cost, let us say this: we will not approach this like Wellington Water, by which we mean revealing our budget while negotiating the price. That turns a buyer's market into a seller's market, and it's commercial stupidity. When the ship and port agreements are signed later this year, you will know the total cost and the shares between the government and the ports. In the meantime, it should be patently obvious to even the most casual observer that an infrastructure program that makes use of what is already there will be markedly cheaper than the IREX program, which sought to knock everything down and build utopia in its place. We are saving the taxpayer billions. Port Marlborough, Centreport and KiwiRail have approached this with a focus on pragmatism, cost effectiveness and a heavy dose of reality. Together with Ferry Holdings, they have a single plan to concentrate on now and to deliver on. And we'll back them all the way. Thank you very much. Any questions on this announcement?
There was, and the Prime Minister has confirmed this, a situation where Nicola Willis had come up with a plan, but you were given some extra time to come up with your own. Could you give us a little bit more detail as to whether this idea around these multiple different companies bidding for the ferry was your idea, or do you have one specific contract in mind in amongst those various different contractors that are bidding, that is your plan, and Nicola Willis has another one?
Could you possibly abbreviate your question next time? I mean, don't come here all over the place. Time's money. Start again.
Is your plan the plan to have a number of various different companies bidding for the contract, or do you have one specific?
I just answered that in my speech. I went for great pains to point out that a number of different companies will be in a process, not knowing each other, nevertheless bidding for the contract, yes.
That was the plan that you took to Cabinet, and this is the way that you wanted to go forward with it.
That's in my speech, yes. Well, the work that was done by the experts on the continuance of those ships said they would last, yes, till 2029 if maintained properly. And they still hold that view. I'm sure you're talking about the old ships, aren't you?
Yeah, but I'm saying that...
We did make that clear.
Christmas 2029
Det Norsk Veritas did a thorough exercise for KiwiRail last year and prepared a comprehensive asset management strategy on that very matter. And their answer was yes. Not a great deal. We're trying to use as much as we can, reuse as much as we can going forward. They will obviously, because of the state of Marl, be different over there. But over here, we're doing as much as we possibly can. Well, it's not. You can't go into bias. You've got to look at all the options. But when we looked at and as the previous Minister of Finance was handling the problem, she just had the Ministerial Advisory Group giving one option, road only. And we said, hang on, there are other options, obviously borne by history as well. And when we looked at all those options, it became very clear that rail and road enabled was critical and was cheaper. I can tell you that I told the Minister of Finance my view as to its cost in April of last year, and we're just about right on the button.
And so is the funding envelope that was agreed to by Cabinet for Nicola Willis's plan before she handed the project over to you the same as the envelope that you have today?
No, because she didn't hand over the same project. You're asking me to apply a funding costing for a road only, and I'm talking about road and rail, and it's two different projects. No, nothing has increased from my first projections to her about what it would cost way back in April last year. Yeah, well, no, but you're talking about the one we didn't go ahead with. Look, I'm not going to be arguing about a project. I'm not arguing about a project we're not pursuing with, going ahead with. I'm arguing about a project we are going ahead with. Please, can we stick to that? Or have you lost the plot here? We're saving the taxpayer billions of dollars. That's what you should be focusing on. A whole lot less expensive than what we faced, yes. The only projects there was, I've got to tell you, was IREX or this. That's why we're having this conference today. There's not another one. It's IREX or this. Did the then governments have a press conference like this and tell you last December what their plan was? No. No, they didn't. Not in terms of this matter. We said last December we're going to have an answer for you by the end of March, and we are doing that this day. Well, the difficulty is with the Aotearoa is that it'll have to come off early because we can't do the upgrade with it there. We'll have to ask the team going forward. I wouldn't like to predict the exact month when that happens. Well, you're not looking at a possible alternatives in the meantime, but let's see how we go. Another 30, 40 years, when we fix it up, yes. Well, they only had one potential builder. Now, that's not competitive in my view. So we're putting out to a number of, worldwide we've asked. There have been massive number of contacts on the way to where we got to today. Say again? Well, the advisor group, the ministerial advisor group does not exist. That's yesterday's story. No. It's a recommendation from the Ferry Holdings that we look at all options, including the Korean option, which they renewed when I saw them, in terms of their interest.
Do you expect Hyundai to be one of the interested parties when it comes to the bidding?
Well, I said to you that we would keep the parties confidential because for me to answer that question means that you haven't been listening to my speech. No. You don't, when somebody else's money on the line, namely the taxpayers' money, assume anything. We said we're going to have a proper commercial process to get the best deal for the New Zealand taxpayer. Well, it depends. You should always be careful about the quality of advice you're getting. Some of the advice has been very, very sound. Some of the advice has been revised advice, sort of come to actuality time. And so we're trusting that advice, but we've done what had to be done. We've looked at all the options. We went in there with an open mind to see what the best outcome would be. And it happened to be what, in the end, a conclusion with our forefathers, many of whom had been to war, fought, and they knew what poverty was like and built a country to be number one in the world. When they made that decision way back then, we believe they were right then and we're right now. In other words, they made the same decision we're making. In the past, the public should be seriously concerned. That's why we began this process and made it as wide as possible. And that's why I'm very, very confident, and others are very confident that we've got to the right space and the right decision now. I could give you 1,000 assurances, but some of us are half Scottish. We are more careful about saving your money than we are about saving our own. That's been the driving thing. We're not going to waste $1 of taxpayers' money. Well, the difference is in May of 2020, they were charged with $400.1 million to find two ferries. I came back to find that, see, the cost had blown totally out, and when it was all over, the ferries would be less than 20% of the total cost. So we went out to buy 2 ferries and we bought an infrastructure instead. Now, how does that work?
So I'm asking you then, how are you sure that that's not going to happen?
Because we're back in charge with the same with a wiser team, more experience in what they're looking for. I'm very confident about this group, and I'm very confident about the cooperation we'll get from Marlborough, we'll get from Wellington, and we'll get from Kiwi Rail.
You say there's a ferry contract to be awarded later this year. Do you have any more details on when later this year is?
Yeah, later this year.
Yeah, do you have a deadline on it?
Later this year. If you give people a deadline, now they've got a negotiating chip that you haven't got. You ever been to the paid cards? Well, if you show the other side of your cards, you haven't got a chance of winning, have you? Well, there'll be, obviously, contribution from Port of Marlborough on that side, contribution from Wellington, contribution from Kiwi Rail, and contribution from the taxpayer. All that will be unveiled. As to its actual precise figures, no, but we know what the global costs should be. Yes, because it's in their interest. They're the beneficiary. They're the massive beneficiary of this. This is a commercial proposition for both of them.
How much capacity have we lost on ferries between the high-risk ferries and specification?
Well, you cannot have a loss of capacity. If one is dream time, which could never happen, because the ships were so big, the whole wharves had to be rebuilt, and it's going to cost probably $4.2 billion, and then keep rising, in my view. So there's no comparison. This has got greater capacity than before in terms of ferries. It's modern, and we've got 30 years. With all the assets of every modern technology on these, they're far more maneuverable, and we're far safer to have them. Yeah, well, I might be around in 10 years' time and find a third one, but we'll see on the way through how we go with these. Anything's possible. Well, of course, we took every application or every piece of advice. I can't remember exactly how many came and talked to us, but we listened to them all. I think there were 26 different outlets spoke to us. So, all in all, there were alternative ideas. I don't quite get the gist of your question. Oh, look, this will be a long conference. I told you what the 26 different ideas were. And I dare say it won't be appearing in the New Zealand Herald anyway. Yes, we can, but look, there's quite a lot has to be done there because a lot of it's obsolete. There has to be some road accommodations for road, make it far more efficient. There's a lot of work to go there. Can I just show you a map, though, that maybe gives you a better idea of how it will look? This is I'll get the other one of Wellington. The green areas on this are where there's going to be no change at the wharf. All right? That's Auckland, that's Wellington, and that's Picton. So that's the difference between prior plans and what we're going with now.
And I know that you're not willing to share costs regarding the ferry selling commercial sensitivity, but are you willing to put any kind of a number today for us in terms of what that's for infrastructure costs?
No.
Why not?
because they're diligently working on seeing how much of the present infrastructure they can keep and keep going for years. No, we've done the scoping work. That's the point. We've looked at every part of that and said to ourselves, yes, we could have a far better walk-on, but people aren't there going for the walk-on. They're going to experience the ship. That's what we should focus on first.
Do you have any response to the Green Party on today's statement of banning the claims of disinformation?
Do you have any response to when I told you that this is about the Kiwi Rail and Kiwi Rail alone? No, you don't understand. You don't understand it at all. If there are no more questions, that's it. Anybody got more questions on railways? I am not going to have you guys breaking the rules of a press conference. You can find another press conference from me and I'll talk to you about it then. But I'm not going to use this important occasion about a serious issue that has besieged the New Zealand taxpayer. All right, there we go then. I know you can't keep your word, some of you, but